Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Adrian Tan Show. I'm Adrian Tan, and today I'm bringing you another special episode originally aired on the Thought Leadership Club podcast, hosted by Cheryl Lau. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for allowing me to share this conversation with you on my platform. In this episode titled Quit Story, No More Bosses, How to Make Solopreneurship Work for You, Cheryl and I delve into my journey from corporate life to solopreneurship. We discussed the concept of becoming virtually unemployable after running your own business, how to determine if solopreneurship is the right path for you, and the realities of being your own boss, both the highs and the lows. We also explore strategies for building a personal brand on LinkedIn and share tips for positioning yourself effectively in the business world. This conversation is part of the podcast Quit Story series and touches on many themes from my Amazon SG bestseller book, No More Bosses. Whether you're contemplating a leap into solopreneurship, already on this path, or simply curious about sustainable self employment, I believe you will find our discussion valuable. So let's dive into my conversation with Cheryl Lau on the Thought Leadership Club podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Thought Leader Club podcast. Today, we are going to speak with Adrian, who is the author of No More Bosses, The Journey to Sustainable Self-Employment. And for those of you watching the video of this, you'll see that I'm holding his book right here. And I am delighted to talk more about not just the book, but really also about Adrian's perspectives on quitting traditional forms of employment. And I really want to dive into his actual realities that he's gone through, his experiences of quitting the traditional career path to pursue his own path, on top of supporting his family and other personal responsibilities. And also, what might be Adrian's best advice to those of you who want to make sustainable employment, self employment work for you? So, this episode is part of a series on the show called The Quit Stories, which is where we interview awesome individuals from all walks of life, all of whom have a quit story. Now, as a reminder, the common themes among the stories that you will hear on the series include defining your own version of success instead of doing what you were supposed to do or who you're supposed to be, choosing courage over fear, especially in times of uncertainty or difficulty, and making decisions based on your own values and choosing what matters most to you. Now, to kick us off, let's have Adrian introduce himself. So, Adrian, please could you introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do?
Hey everyone, before that, Cheryl, thank you so much for making this happen. Really love your show. I enjoy many different episodes of it, especially the monologues, high production value. It really kick ass. For myself, I'm currently a fractional CMO. So I do marketing for a very specific type of companies, which are in the HR tech space. And I also do my own podcast. I dabble in YouTube as much as I can. It's more of a hobby thing. And of course, I'm an author of this new book, which I've launched, No More Bosses. My journey into where I am right now actually started more than 20 years ago. I started a recruitment business. That's where I ended up marketing and selling to HR department. I did that for about 11 years before bouncing around, join other businesses in outplacement, in HR certifications. But the common theme here is I always deal with the HR departments of different companies, and which is why I decided to maintain in this niche. And along the years, people also told me, hey, marketing seems to be our superpower. So I thought, hey, we can combine that together and come up with something. And here I am.
Okay. So to kick us off, I think the burning question on people's minds is, okay, Adrian, your book is called No More Bosses, which is like a bold statement. But Adrian, what if you ever would you ever consider going back to a 9 to 5 job? Like, because you have this book called No More Bosses. Like, how is that gonna work?
Um, Technically, what I'm doing right now as someone independent is actually my fifth attempt. So I've done it a few times. And of course, as I shared in between, I've been in jobs. But I think I've been in jobs long enough to know that I'm quite unemployable. So it's really tough for me to constrain or to conform myself to the corporate structure of an organization. I always tend to fixate on the bullshit of an organization. That makes it really hard for one to perform well in their job. So if I can, I would never go back to any corporate job again because to me it just feels so stifling. And I really enjoy the independence that I have right now. I cannot imagine me picking up all these side gigs here and there if I'm still in gainfully employed, because every time you have to go to Copcom, every time you have to go to your boss. And to be honest, some of the side gigs are not even something that you get paid a lot for. Some of them are even pro bono. But I guess in the big scheme of things, and always bearing in mind that you only live once, you really want to experience different stuff. And to do so, I guess you just want to be in that mode where you can just, okay, I want to take that on without asking for permission.
Mm. The key word that jumped out at me was I'm unemployable. That's such an interesting way of phrasing it. I think for the listeners right now, they're like, am I unemployable too? This will probably apply to those who currently also feel like their job is just not serving them or it's not for them. So to dive a little bit more into this, Adrian, how would someone know if they are unemployable and have what it takes to pursue self-employment?
I think if you constantly have to question your value, your fit into the organization, that's a good first step. Every single one of us has our personal core values. So it could be empathy, it could be honesty, etc., and so on. Organization may say the same thing. You usually see a lot of wall art when you walk into any office building. But that's what they are. They are wall art. Nobody actually pay much attention to them. And over time, you realize the behavior of the organization at large, typically led by the leaders, would actually show what the true core values of the organizations are. Yeah, like for instance, I worked in a company before. This was during the early days, and one of the thing on the wall art is open communication. But you often see the first thing that the CEO do after he arrived into the office is to shut his door. And the only two times you get to see him is when he go for lunch, when he go to the loo. That's it. So it just doesn't gel with what is written on the wall. So then you have to ask yourself, okay, but I really embrace open communication. I want to work in an environment where I can talk to anyone. There's no hierarchy, unlike the military. So that would make things very hard for you to function over a long period of time within the organization. So this is just one of the examples. There's many other examples. Within a company, most of them are profit oriented. So if you want to go all out to make money, then you have an issue maybe against your current core value where you want to really apply honesty. You want to be true to your consumer because you see consumer as also people that you want to be with because you're also part of the consumer space. So all these are telltale signs for you to think about and to really ponder if that is the true North Star. Now, having said that, there are, of course, legit companies that would have those core values and they do practice it. I guess it's something like dating. You have to go through many dates with many different people before you find the right one. As Steve Jobs said, keep finding, don't settle.
This is not your first rodeo. Like this venture into self-employment is not your first time doing it. And at what age did you first try self-employment? And how is that first experience different from now, like years later? Like what has changed? How have you matured over the years? Like tell us more.
Oh, the first attempt was horrendous. I did that after my 11 year with running the recruitment agency. And towards the tail end, I actually returned a career guidebook. So that became a calling card for me and my co-author to pursue related gigs, whether it's career coaching, career training, etc. He went back to corporate, so I decided to continue the path as a solopreneur. This was back in 2014, 2015. So it was a very different time. There wasn't a lot of things you could really leverage on to help you automate stuff. There's no chat GPT for you to make use of. And also there's no Zoom. So when I have to really screen, prospect, or to do a consultation, it has to be in person. And that takes up a lot of time cost. So that's one thing. And I think the business model wise, it's just tough to get it off, even in today's context, because in Singapore, there's always the government providing free career coaches for the general public. So I'm actually competing against that space. Only for people who see a certain value, then they will want to pay for it. And I think that the thing is, financially, I just wasn't ready. I was overspending. I have a heavy mortgage. I bought a fancy car, and my third kid was on the way. So while I was trying to get my business off the ground, all these different liabilities started to weigh on my shoulder, and it's very distracting. And it's very easy for one to make quick decisions that allow for quick buck, but doesn't really make sense for the long term. And I kept making those. So ultimately, I decided, okay, this isn't working out. I'm really scraping the bottom of the barrel just to put food on the table. So eventually, I call it quit.
So now in 2024 and going forward, how is your current experience with being your own boss, doing your own thing? How is it different from the first rodeo?
So I'm actually very surprised that this current rodeo turned out to be so much better. Um, I started this quite accidentally. So in my last job, in a fit of anger, I said I quit to my boss, which I actually mentioned in the book. And because well, I did that because I was really angry at that point in time. And next day, I was like, oh no, what now? What did I say yesterday? But the toothpaste is already out of the tube, so I cannot bring that in. So I actually put out after deciding that I want to go solo. I put out a LinkedIn post that I'm going independent. If there's any collaboration, any engagement, feel free to reach out to me. At that point, I already have 2 adjunct teaching assignments, and 3 different companies reach out to me for different assignments, different retainers, and all in, I actually had 5 different assignments at the same time. And I actually even double my income compared to my last job. And that helped me to wonder, is this sustainable? So I just continued from there. Of course, assignments came and left, new assignment came on board. But I am able to see that this is much more sustainable. And I guess the key difference is the business I'm working on right now is actually more of a B2B kind of thing. Whereas when I was doing career coaching, it was B2C. So I have to literally go to different individuals. Hey, do you want to be coached by me? An hour for 150, 250. And it's very, very tough because there are just so many of them. But when it comes to dealing with business, I can only take on maybe 2 customers right now. And each of them will be paying me a high premium retainer. And that's good enough for me. And importantly, I'm not optimizing for money. I find it silly for anyone who wants to pursue solopreneur to optimize for money. You might as well just stay in the corporate structure. It's much easier actually. So I'm optimizing for freedom, for flexibility. So I only try to max out my working hours to like 30 hours a week, which is why I can only take on 2 assignments. So and of course, you have all the automation, your AI and all that. That really makes work much easier right now. So I think all in, that's the key differentiation that I can sense. And so far, it is going well. And I hope it will be able to continue for as long as possible.
Mm. I think what was really amazing is how this particular time when you went to do your own path is that very quickly you were able to get support and also clients pretty quickly. And I guess that speaks volumes to perhaps the reputation you've built over the years. And you're very active on LinkedIn. And even in the book itself, you have a wealth of really practical, actionable advice on building your personal brand as well. But the question I wanted to ask is for the listener who may be younger, more inexperienced, maybe they just don't have as much professional experience under their belt, but they're like enamored by the title, no more bosses, right? Like, would they like how young is too young to pursue your own form of employment? Like, do you have any like benchmarks, like, or any like criteria you would recommend someone to consider before deciding, like, is it too early for you to try to be self-employed?
The realm of self-employment is actually very wide. Right now, TikToker, Instagrammer, YouTuber can also technically be classified as self-employed.
Mm.
Me and my kids were just talking about YouTube creators yesterday, and we were talking about this guy. I think his channel is Ryan something, but basically, it's this kid who review toys,
Mm.
and he has been doing it since he was like, I don't know, 5, 6 years old. Right now, he's 14, and his channel, which is managed by his parents, if I don't remember wrongly, it brought in like $25 million a year just reviewing toys. Honestly, that guy doesn't have to go to school. He can continue to review toys way until his hundreds. Um, but so to your question, I think any age is possible. You just, of course, have to find what is interesting for you, because the key thing here is sustainability. Yeah, how long can you do it? A lot of battles are won not because someone is good, but because someone refused to give up. So finding that interest that could really be sustained over a period of time is very important. And there's really no hard and fast rule about how to find that. If you were to ask yourself that question, I can guarantee you won't be able to get an answer for a very long time. In fact, maybe never. But what you can try first is to ask yourself, what do you dislike doing? And that will help you to eliminate the noise. So you won't be able to know the true destination, but at least you'll be able to know the right direction to head towards, and just continue to put one foot after the other in that direction. So that's one thing. So for anyone out there who may be keen to try it out, I guess you just have to put yourself out there and start tinkling with stuff. When I exited from my recruitment business, I actually wanted to get a job in any HR technology company. For a very silly reason. In a recruitment business, you often deal with a lot of salespeople. And salespeople, they are usually prima donna. And so I reached a stage where I don't want to deal with people anymore, please. Let me just deal with technology. So I interviewed at LinkedIn. I interviewed at a company. They're no longer around, I think, hire.com. I didn't get a job. But so I was thinking, okay, then I still have this itch that I want to scratch. So I started, this was back in 2015. So blogging was a thing. So I started to write about HR tech and HR tech only. So that started, and it continued to build, it continued to accumulate, and it really snowballed when I decided to roll out this HR tech market map that covers Singapore. And it just went viral, at least within the B2B space. And that started to make people see me as the go-to expert for all things HR tech, despite the fact that I've never worked in a HR tech before. So if you're able to take things from a content expert angle, I think there is still a way for you to work around the fact that you may be lacking in those skill sets. And the happy ending to this story is because of my writing. When I was in India for a trade show as a visitor, a rep from a company recognized me. So we had conversation at the booth, went to their office. They're opening up an office in Singapore. They're asking me for my help. And long story short, I became their employee number one in Singapore.
All because you had built essentially a brand and a body of work and a reputation through LinkedIn. And just to clarify, is LinkedIn your primary platform right now?
I would have to say, unfortunately, yes, because
Mm.
nobody go to websites anymore.
Mm.
As much as I still try to repurpose whatever I have on my website, but the traffic on my website pales in comparison to what LinkedIn is drawing in right now.
I see. So you know what? Why don't we segue into the conversation around LinkedIn? So this book, again, has a lot of really practical advice on branding, LinkedIn positioning, things like that. So definitely, listeners, this is a book that I believe you can get on Amazon. Is that correct? It's an
Yes.
Amazon bestseller, if I'm not wrong.
Well,
Something like
I'm
that.
not sure if it still is. The ranking keep going up and
I
down.
see. But it was at one point. Fantastic. Okay. So, you know what? To kick us off into this conversation around LinkedIn, Adrian, I think I'm really curious about, but what if like I have a quote unquote small audience on LinkedIn? Like let's say 500 connections slash followers? Because I know you're in the thousands. I think you are at like the 40,000, I believe. Um, if someone is just starting to dabble with the idea of, you know what, LinkedIn is going to be a key factor in helping me pursue a path in solopreneurship and self-employment, what's the first three things they should do?
For LinkedIn, I think the first thing you need to do is to establish a positioning. So, like me, if you just want to talk about HR tech, then you should do that as well. But also one thing you have to understand whether your audience might be on that platform. Your audience likely would be if you're in the B2B space. Of course, it does not necessarily have to be selling of stuff. It could be more of trying to build up your profile because you want to be the employee of choice, for example. But still, you have to be known for something. And you have to also be willing enough to put your thoughts out there. And this, of course, is what people call thought leadership. And when you talk about thought leadership, you have to accept the fact that there are people who will not agree with you and they may flame you for whatever you say. I've been at the receiving end of that. In fact, the first time I received this, it came back to back within the same post. I was so distraughted by the entire experience. I was thinking, what's my best rebuke? To this group, to this couple of guys, I spent my entire day thinking about the perfect retort, which never materialized. And I wasted the entire day. So those are the things that you have to really be prepared for. And of course, ultimately to start putting those content out there. Now, I must admit, the LinkedIn game right now is a bit different from when I first started. I actually started when LinkedIn probably just had an office in Singapore, 20 people. Right now, I don't know, 500 people, over 3 stories at MBSC or something. So it's crazy. But there are signs and clues, like what Tony Robbins always said, success leaves clues. So you should look at very similar influencer or people who are nailing it on LinkedIn within your space. If you are, say, an executive coach, you may want to draw reference from someone like Eric Partaker, who is a CEO coach. I think he has, I don't know, 80,000, 100,000 followers. His content is nailing it. So how do you draw reference from what he's doing and try to repurpose that or even apply something similar to your local audience? So that's one example. And of course, there are also many other influencers out there trying to teach you how to do things, and they seem to be at the forefront of knowing what the new algorithm require. Like for right now, if you go to LinkedIn ad, you may notice videos in your stream. You may be thinking, hey, I thought I went into LinkedIn. Why am I seeing Instagram? But no, you're not seeing Instagram. LinkedIn is starting to prioritize on video. So if you know that and you want to ride on that train, so then what the next thing you should do is start producing more videos because LinkedIn is going to pick that up. Yeah, many years ago or maybe months ago, they were prioritizing on certain topics, they were prioritizing on certain hashtag. So you have to really keep your ears on the ground. There is a page, I think it's called LinkedIn Creator Network or something. I would highly recommend everyone to follow that page because when there are new stuff that they want to cover, they would actually promote that. And then you can draw reference from that channel and start working that into your content. But ultimately, it's really about the quantity. Yeah, I'm not saying 10 posts a day and all that. It's just not practical. Most of us have day job. But you want to have some form of regularity. I'm currently doing once a day just on weekday. I think that's sufficient. And also LinkedIn is currently prioritizing a lot on interaction. They don't want it to be just a one-sided thing. So when you have a post out, people will interact. They expect you to interact back. So that really proves, I guess, to the algorithm that you're a true blue person. You're not a bot. And also, they just want to drive engagement on the platform. Ultimately, all social media platform behaves the same way. They want to have retention. They want to increase usage of the app or the platform as much as possible and as long as possible. They want to create that stickiness. So if you're able to help them with that stickiness, they'll love you.
Quick question. I'm very nosy about this. So you mentioned how platforms like LinkedIn would love for its users to engage with one another, but we can't deny that there are folks who are engaging for the sake of getting more engagement on their own content. So I just want to hear your thoughts on But like, what if someone's thinking, okay, like I get it, like I should be engaging with other people's content, and maybe that'll help boost me in the algorithm, but I don't want to. Like, it feels so like, oh, what would you say to that? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think there's still room for you to apply that in a much more, I guess, higher ROI kind of way. So say, for instance, you just want to present yourself as an employee of choice for pharmaceutical company, for example. Then I would be very selective in whose posts I want to observe and monitor. Likely my future potential hiring manager in those companies, see whatever they say, and whatever they say that interests me, I will come up with something intelligent to reply. So over time, people will be able to notice you and also to realize, hey, this person actually has something intelligent to say. So that is one possible way. But yes, you're right. There are people who are gaming this whole thing altogether right now because comments, interactions, repost being the highest lift, are actually signs to LinkedIn that this post is performing well. So I've actually seen this, and I shared this with a close friend of mine. Occasionally I see this person's post. It's just a selfie shot. The copy is quite meh, but then you get like 300 over likes and interaction and all that. So over time, I'm wondering, well, why is that the case? Because the content doesn't seem that interesting. Then something told me to check the reposts, and I went to check the reposts, and the posts were reposted. I can't remember, maybe 7-8 times, by different profiles, different pages. That they are very obvious. Those are not real profiles or real pages. Likely someone created them. Those are bots. And if you look at the stream of those bots page, it's just reposts. And it's just reposts of this person's post, nothing else. Yeah, so there are things like that. But I wouldn't suggest anyone go that path. Again, those are easy, quick wins, but ultimately those are like the dark. They call it the dark hat. So ultimately you'll come back and hit you one day, I feel.
Mm. Okay. Yes, I agree with that. For me, I'm someone who's like very stubborn, and like in my head, I'm like, I refuse to engage with other people's stuff just for the sake of the algorithm. Like that's my stubborn thought. But I do see that when I go on my LinkedIn feed, I do see that there are many times when people's comments on other people's stuff are actually interesting and thoughtful, and like they actually are trying to engage in a dialogue. So I think there are definitely examples of engagement and LinkedIn best practices done very, very well. One thing that I want to ask is, going back to your point about the first thing you should do is positioning. And again, like in the book, there are actual like examples of how to do so. But right now, if you were to share with the audience one tip related to positioning yourself on LinkedIn, what would it be?
I will suggest to find a niche that is so narrow that by virtue of you turning up, you'll be the number one. And yeah, because if I were to go around and tell people, oh, I'm a fractional CMO, fractional head of marketing. Honestly, right now, the fractional space is getting quite congested. I'm in a couple of WhatsApp group. There are literally more than 2, 3, maybe even 100 fractional CMO. So it's very hard for you to stand out in that sea of similarity. But then I would tell people, oh, I'm a fractional CMO for HR tech. And everyone be like, oh, okay. And that naturally propelled me to be number one in that category. In fact, probably the only one in that category. So you want to find a space that is so narrow that you simply become the number one just by turning up.
Well, that's making me think, what could I be positioning myself as the few or the only one in? Anyways, conversation for later, but let me think on that for myself. Thank you for sharing that tip. Okay. Earlier you were mentioning how like there was um maybe a few instances where like you were flamed in your comments or whatnot. I One thing that as you were sharing that earlier, one thing that came to my mind was, oh wow, like if my, let's say, like loved one or close friend was getting flamed by like trolls and like people who have disagreeing viewpoints, I would be so sad and like so like wanting to just encourage them to not do this anymore. So I think one thing I would love to know is whenever you get comments or like very strong disagreeing viewpoints that like get to you, how do people, your close ones, your loved ones around you, how do they react? Like, do they try to like encourage you to just like, maybe you should stop being on LinkedIn? Like, what's their reaction?
I personally never get a chance to see that. I'm actually someone who spent a lot of time in my head, and especially when during bad times, I'll spend even more time in my head. So I usually keep things to myself, so they never get a chance to see that. But I think if I know my kids are being flamed by trolls and all that, I feel the best way to handle it is to confront them, but not in a threatening manner, but for a conversation. I've seen this happen for someone who is who used to be a NCMP in Singapore, Kelvin Cheng. He's quite vocal on Facebook, and because of how vocal he is, he often invite a lot of disagreement. And I've seen one step which I thought was very gentleman of him, which is, okay, we really disagreed. We really have this very long to and fro in the comment section. Why don't we meet up and talk it out? Because you realize when you meet someone to talk it out, it's very different. Many of us are perhaps more, are much ruder, are more inclined to be very extreme because we are behind a screen. We are in front of a keyboard. But in actual, can you imagine people who flame you behave the same way in person? That would be crazy. So I don't think that would happen most of the time. And if you're able to really get the person to meet with you, have a meeting of mind, have a discussion, agree to disagree, I think not only could you manage a situation well, you could even make a friend of it. So that would be one. Although I must say, I have a friend who did that as well because he was flamed for something he said on LinkedIn. He did the invite, but the invitee never accept. But I think it also shows that, hey, my friend was the one who extended the olive branch, but the other party refused to accept. If this is a competition, my friend will win.
That's such a great example or like uh, a viewpoint because like that just reminds me of how like even in non-LinkedIn disagreement situations, like let's say for me, for example, the immediate example that came to my mind was when I and my partner have a argument. I'm always so much angrier on WhatsApp. Like I always sound furious and like a keyboard warrior on WhatsApp, but when we actually meet and like talk it out, I'm like much more like calm and more mellow. So such a great example, actually. Speaking of disagreements, I think one thing I'm personally curious about is when you decided to actually every single time that you've pursued self-employment so far, did people around you disagree with your decision?
When I started my first business, my mom never gave her blessing, which is, I guess, a given. Asian parents of that generation, they just want their kids to study hard, become civil servants. And when I started my future endeavor, I do get comments from my wife asking me when am I going to get a real job. But I think she has asked enough to be ignored, and knowing that she stopped asking it altogether. Um, but of course, I do get her point of view. Ultimately, one has to sustain the cost of living, especially when you have a big family like mine. Uh, so I do put time limit for myself on how long I should continue with certain stuff, which is also why from my exit initially, which happened in 2014 until now, I was I was in other jobs, because those are the period where I needed a reset in self-employment or my business space. I couldn't get those things to work. So I have to retreat, I have to reconfigure, and I have to refinance through other corporate assignments, which I did. So yeah, the lack of support can be very troubling, because when you do any form of business, it's really a roller coaster ride. Of course, you have the thrills of the hype, but you also have the downside. And when you're down and out, the last thing you want is for someone to pour cold water on you. Yeah. So I think that kind of support is very important to secure at the from the very beginning, so you have one less worry as you try to navigate and make sense of your self-employment.
That is such a real lived experience that I think more likely than not, most people pursuing solopreneurship or starting their own business will, especially if it's their full-time pursuit, something that likely most people will have to navigate at some point. So I guess for those listeners right now who are thinking, maybe they already have started a side business or they're thinking about jumping into their own business full time, but people around them are like super anti their decision. What encouraging words or a different perspective can you offer the listener who's in that situation?
One of the quotes, I'm a huge quote collector. So I have a library of quotes in one of my Notion page, and one of the quotes come to mind, which is, "You only have one thing to do in life, and that thing is to disappoint as many people as you can around you, so you don't have to disappoint yourself." So I think if your calling is to do that, yes, it may be the wrong thing for you to do. It may not work out at all, but at least it is your decision. And the last thing you want is 10 years later to look back. And I mentioned this in chapter 2 of my book, because a friend of mine, he started a HR tech business. And before that, he was in a cushy job. He was a regional director at a consultancy, 3 young daughters. And he told me one of the key reasons is what he learned from Jeff Bezos, regret minimization framework. Yeah, I'm sure the listeners can Google and find out more about it. But basically, she doesn't want to look back 10 years later or near his retirement and have the regret that she did not take that path. Yeah. And I think, the thing about all this path, it doesn't have to be permanent. You could do this for a couple of years, you could do it for 5 years, and then go back to what you're doing. It's perfectly fine. So don't have to see it as a permanent thing. See it as a tour of duty. Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn, has this great book, which is very much on tour of duty. So if you're able to frame it that way, hopefully that would help you to get more support along the way. But ultimately, it is your life to lead. Again, if you need to disappoint 100 people in your life so that you wouldn't disappoint yourself, I feel you should do so.
Yeah, and in the book, there are multiple case studies of people that you've worked with or people you've come across, and your own case study as well in the book that really illustrate that exact sentiment of there are times when there's a lot of reason. Your brain will give you a lot of reasons why you shouldn't even try. But there are endless case studies in this book that demonstrate that if you do try, if you do give yourself at least a fighting chance to try. And one thing that I was actually dying to ask you is there any stories or things that you would have wanted to include in the book, but it just didn't make the cut for whatever reason? And what would that be?
Oh, yes. There's supposed to be a 6th story. That story didn't make the cut. So right now you would see 5 different stories. And the 6th story actually came about because, the key difference is this person, she is no longer self-employed. So she tried, it didn't work out. So she has gone back to corporate and is actually doing very well right now. And that also become a portion of the later chapters. I basically wanted to tell the audience, if it doesn't work out, it's okay. It's actually okay. You can always go back to the corporate. Here's an example of how someone has done it. It's in case study number 6. But the publisher was like, oh, no. This should be a bit more linear. We should just be helping and encouraging people to look at this as one key possibility and maintain that as it is. So that's the key part that didn't make it. But I guess my life story within the book is a strong reference point on the fact that, hey, first time it doesn't work, just regroup, go again, regroup. It's always possible, because it's just so naive to think that your first attempt would always be your last attempt and you'll be your most successful attempt. I mean, I've seen people who has done that well. If you look at Mr. Beast, I think his current channel is his first channel. He's doing it fantastic. But I think we should also be cautious about survivor bias. Recently, I put up a LinkedIn post, the screenshot of this incoming CEO at Nike is going around on the internet, because this guy joined Nike as an intern. I think so far he has been in Nike for like 32 years, if I'm not wrong. And everyone is like, oh, it proves that if you stay in a company long enough, you can climb up the ladder, blah, blah, blah. And I put out a post basically telling people, success is great to be celebrated, but survivor bias remains undefeated, because there are so many other people who got stuck at intern and never continue. So we have to really balance things and to see things from both sides and ask yourself whether you're willing to accept the difficulties that come with the path that you choose.
So I really resonated with you're sharing about how there might be times when you have to pivot and go back to a job, and that's not a problem at all. So I really appreciate you for sharing that. Actually, I'm curious to know, when you did go back to a job, in the past years, like, were you like, oh, grumble, like, I don't want to do this. Like, what was your personal, like, emotional response to the thought of, like, you know what? I think I should go back to a job for now. Like, what was your emotional reaction or experience?
To be honest, when 2 jobs ago, I was much more, in fact, even from 3 jobs ago, I was much more appreciative of having a job then, because when I had to take those jobs, it was always due to financial reason. So when I take on a job and I had stable income, one burden is lifted off my chest. Yeah, I know I can start financing stuff. I can put food on the table. So one less worry. And it's also good to be, I guess, when you're running your own thing, you have to do everything. When I was running my recruitment business, I was the one cleaning a toilet. And it's not fun, but someone has to do it. So and you have to deal with the office lease. You have to make sure the internet is working. You have to make sure that the area is clean. You have to turn around the waste paper basket, a lot of stuff. So it's nice that when you get into a job, all these are well taken care of. You just have to sit and watch people do all those stuff for you. Oh, you mean I don't have to return my cups myself? Okay, that's great. And when I took on my the 2 jobs ago, we were in a WeWork, so everything is well taken care of, and you're given all your stuff to use and all that. So all those are really much appreciated. But of course, that is until the bureaucracy creeps in. Some of the disagreements start seeping in, and of course that's when you start to look at things from a different lens. But the initial days are always good, the honeymoon period, and even for my last job, although I quit in anger, but it's really nice to be in an environment where you get to know and meet people. The journey of a solopreneur is very, very lonely. Very lonely. Even for someone like me who is so accustomed to staying in my own head. Even I would go crazy sometimes. I need someone to speak with. So I realized that during the peak of COVID, when we were all locked down, I realized my best days were when I was on this platform called Lunch Club. Lunch Club was a platform, not sure if they're still around. They basically connect random people together to have a conversation. Oh, of course, before that, you can predefine, who you want to speak with, in which country, interest, topic of interest, etc., etc. My best days were days when I get to speak with someone. So as much as I'm introverted, as much as I like to spend time in my own head, speaking with people, getting to know people is great, which is something that I get to do right now as part of my assignment. So those are the good things that I look forward to. So, as with all things, there's always the bad stuff in life. It's just how you try to frame it, how you try to look at things. And ultimately, you have to choose the kind of bad stuff you are willing to accept, because everything comes with bad stuff.
I appreciate the candidness that you've been sharing, like the real experiences that you've gone through and that people can expect if they do choose to pursue this path. Yeah, loneliness, financial uncertainties, there will be, and having to do a lot of things and having a lot of pressure on yourself and doing a lot of the dirty work that you don't want to do. Like it's part of the growth and you're signing up for this, right? And at least again, like I think the main takeaway I'm getting from this conversation is just give yourself the fighting chance. If you know that this is something you want to try, give yourself the chance to at least try it and give it your best. So as we start to near the end of the conversation for today, I want to spend more time on the book itself. So for those who are curious, who would you say this book is best for? And I would even ask, who might this book not be a good fit for?
That's a great question. There's one part of the subtitle that was taken out. So the original subtitle was supposed to be "The Journey to Sustainable Mid-Career Self-Employment." And the reason is because I'm mid-career. I'm 44. No, I'm 45 this year. And so I can only write from my perspective. And I feel my perspective would be most relevant for people around the same age as I am. But the publisher decided to take that out. We want to appeal to a wider audience, blah, blah, blah. But still, the essence of this book is still very much geared towards people at my age group. And people at my age group in Singapore, particularly, would have liabilities, would have obligations. They may have kids, they'll have marriage, they have mortgage, taking care of the elders, da, da, da. So you have to be a bit more deliberate if you still want to pursue self-employment. You have to look at high margin stuff. You have to look at high premium. If you don't have money to even buy inventory, you have to look at services. What are services that could give you or allow you to command high prices? So things like that. So those are more prevalent. But of course, if you were to look past all that, I think conceptually it would still apply very much to any folks who are keen to look at self-employment. But one thing that really helped me to be successful on my journey is I put a lot of time into thought leadership and content marketing. Content marketing does not have very quick ROI. It would take a very long time. I haven't counted, but I would guess I've written at least 1,000 different blog posts. And that naturally would bring you stuff. For me, it would be, at one point in time, very regular commentary on Channel News Asia. And that also helped me gain my gig at CNA Work It podcast. So those are stuff that will come about when you do content marketing. But you really have to put in the reps. You cannot just, I'm going to write this one lengthy post and it's going to nail it. It's not going to happen. Yeah. So if you don't have the patience, if you just want to go for quick stuff, maybe instead of spending the money on my book, put that into crypto. That might work out better for you.
I really resonate with that. It's like this journey, not just content and thought leadership and being on LinkedIn, but like just the whole this pursuit, this career, this lifestyle, these aspirations, it's going to take time and commitment and a lot of repetitions. And if you're willing to put in the repetitions and do it for as long as it takes and pivots here and there and problem solving when needed, you're probably a great fit, not just for the book, but like for this journey ahead as well. So, Adrian, any last words for our audience? And also, where can people get the book?
I because due to the length of this podcast, it may seem I'm just jumping from one thing to another successfully, but I do have to point out that there are a lot more stories in between those transition. It's not every time my venture did not work out, I managed to easily find an employment. That is never the case. In fact, the first one was so hard, I had to take to driving Uber for a period of time just to make ends meet. So those are things that you have to ask yourself, are you willing to bear the brunt when things really get so bad? But ultimately, again, if you keep putting one foot after another over a period of time, I'm very certain you will be able to excel in anything that you put your minds and head to. To this book, you can actually get this book at Amazon. You can get it at Kinokuniya. I've seen it at Popular Bookshop. I've been asking my friends who have taken pictures of them at different bookshops to help me put on a higher shelf for visibility purpose. So major bookshops, you can get it anywhere. Not at airport bookshops though, unfortunately. I hope you'll be there very soon.
We'll smuggle it in. We'll somehow figure it out. I don't know how, but we'll figure
People
it
are
out.
smuggling things out into the country and smuggling in things into the airport.
Okay. Adrian, thank you so much for your time and your perspectives. And final question is, how can people connect you? Where can they find you? How can they work with you?
People can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Adrian Tan. I realize it seems to be a bit harder to find me nowadays. I'm not sure why. But yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. You can also go to my website, adriantan.com.sg. If you want to work with me or collect with me, just reach out to me on my contact me page, or you could just drop me a DM on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Links will be in the show notes below. You can definitely find Adrian easily with the show notes. The links will be there. Cool. Okay. Everyone who is listening, thank you so much as always for tuning in. Adrian, thank you as well for being here. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye, everyone.